The court days here in America were really a continuation of a tradition that began in England. Back right after William the Conqueror, there was a legal system set up that the local knights basically held court at least once a year, and all of the legal problems of his county were brought into him for solution at that time. Well, of course, as the population grew, it became necessary to do it more than once a year, and they happened frequently. Well, when that tradition transferred here to the Americas, particularly in the colonies, they were usually at least twice a year. And when you gathered people for a court day, they followed the English tradition, and everything else came in with it, so that you had a market set up where people would trade food, goods, peddlers would gather, okay? Entertainers would gather. Of course, there were also the more immoral entertainments that came up at the same time. So the court day became a minor festival in most county courthouses across the colonies, and then later into the new United States. This is the tradition you'd be seeing here. The laws themselves were very basic. In the beginning, in the absence of other laws, we went by biblical law, all right? And that essentially it was a thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder, etc. And they enforced this with very biblical punishments. There were no jails, therefore there were no long-term jail sentences. The punishments that they had for whatever the infractions were things like whipping. It was the biblical 40 lashes save one, or 39 lashes, okay? Or brandings. People were branded like a T for thief, or R for robber, either on the cheek or on the hand. They had fines, banishment, and of course death. So that they kept their punishments to very brief things that took the minimum of logistical support. Most of your court cases, from the records that I've had a chance to look at, were really over land transactions, the overlapping claims, the shingled claims, or disputes over borders, or disputes over animals, who belongs to that animal, or did that animal do damage to this person's farm. So they are basically adjudicated by a justice of the peace, or later on by judges, depending upon which particular state and which state constitution you're going by. This was always done to a tremendous audience. People came in to watch it. I mean, frankly, these folks were starved for human contact. If you lived on one of these homesteads, the chances are you lived about 7 miles from your nearest neighbor, okay? There's a number of accounts of people saying that they, like Emmanuel Hatfield, people going for a year without seeing anybody outside of their family. When they had a court day, they came in and they came in to party. And court days got a very, very bad reputation for this because they were frequently associated with heavy drinking, with a lot of crimes that were committed during the court day. For example, one of the accounts that I've got of Virginia, that during the court day there were 2 murders took place in 2 different taverns in the town. Okay, this is very typical. So what I think is really interesting is, particularly here in the over-mountain frontier, when the Second Great Awakening arrived, that the Second Great Awakening began to co-opt the court days. And they moved their revivals into the court days as an alternative to this wildness that had been there during the English tradition and into the early colonial frontier. So this would also be very much a part of our tradition. So you would have conflicting traditions. You'd have the people, the lawless crew in the frontier coming in and partying, and you'd have the revivalists in at the same time, competing for their attention and their interest. So a court day here on the Midwestern frontier would have been a very rich experience with a little bit of almost everything that we have going on in the frontier.